Good evening, everyone. So it looks like Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to tip the scales of the US election. Now, depending on where you get your news or where you read your, online or wherever that may be, you can literally see the two distinctive, angles of this. So one angle is, Biden's incompetence is leading to war, and the other one is Benjamin Netanyahu who's trying to interfere with US elections. Guys, remember what I always say. And guys, before we start, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. 30% of viewers to this channel don't actually subscribe. So guys, why haven't you clicked that button underneath? Really appreciate it when you guys do that. It helps with the algorithm. It helps me so much. So those who've been watching my channel, you'll know I always talk about these interpersonal relationships between leaders because nothing else matters. And I've seen this so many times in my personal career, in when I've been working in government level. Nothing else matters, only relationships between two people. Whether that's a peace negotiation, an election negotiation whereby somebody's going to stand down at the last minute, whether that's a sales or a corporate commercial opportunity. Interpersonal relationships are ridiculously important. In fact, you could argue they're the most important thing. So I know I've talked about this a lot of times, but look at the relationship and look at how Benjamin Netanyahu meets with Trump. Look how they talk to each other. Look at their body language, and then look at like David Lammy's body language when he goes to meet Benjamin Netanyahu. Oh, hang on a minute, no. He didn't meet Netanyahu, did he? No, he didn't want. No, that's it. So our foreign secretary didn't actually get a meeting with Netanyahu. He went out there for a meeting with Netanyahu, but Netanyahu didn't want to meet him because of reasons. Again, just shows you that interpersonal relationships do matter. Doesn't matter what your voters think. Doesn't matter what your policies are. Those interpersonal relationships are key. Forming friendships, building alliances, that is what drives things forwards. So I'll just quickly go to an article from The Hill, which is I'll share it with you actually, guys. Democrats suspect Netanyahu attempting to tilt Trump-Harris race. Democrats increasingly suspect that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to, this is wild as well, is trying to interfere with the US domestic politics by ignoring President Biden's calls. Like, I don't know. I mean, whether he's trying to tilt the scales or not is a different story. But to put down there, he's trying to tilt the election by not answering somebody's calls, it's a little bit ridiculous. Anyway, rejected, not answering his calls to negotiate a peace deal in Gaza, and by confronting Hezbollah and Iran weeks before the US election. Obviously, the calls here are not phone calls; they're calls. But what this is here, so for those of you guys who've been following the channel, you know this diversions that I talk about, where the US is going to meet. It's going to be bogged down in the Middle East. This, if this was all planned years ago, this is exactly how you do it. You'd build these escalations up right before the US election. You would pummel these escalations further and further forwards. So Trump, he's the one who looks like he's the strong man. He's the guy who can deal with this. So the rapidly escalating confrontation between Israel, Hezbollah, and Hezbollah's ally Iran has undercut Biden's efforts to achieve peace through diplomacy. So where Biden's, and again, I'll come off that now, guys. I will come off it, but I'll still read from it. So when Joe Biden's, and again, or whoever Joe Biden's writes his teleprompter, is going out there and they're trying to achieve peace by diplomacy. What if both sides don't want peace? What if nobody actually wants peace? kind of a pointless exercise. You might as well stay at home and have tea and biscuits, because at the moment we're heading towards this situation where it seems to me that there are so many stars aligning, if you want to use that phrase, to move us into this global conflict. And then, so reading from the article again, so the growing threat of a broader conflict in the Middle East has opened the door for former President Trump to argue that the world is spiraling out of control on Biden's watch, which it's very hard, it's very hard to disagree with that. The Biden administration have made so many absolutely catastrophic errors. And, I don't want to, as somebody who's British, I don't really like getting involved and commentating on other people's, what's happening in other people's countries. But I think one of the main things that Biden got massively wrong was the issue on the southern border. So the issue on the southern border, it's kind of like Britain's issue on our southern border, where they're having and again, it's hard to call these people migrants, because a migrant would be somebody who applies for a visa, sends off the relevant documents, sends off the relevant medical accreditation, medical checks, sends off their whatever, their proof of finance, their job prospects, their qualifications. Then they would get a response, then they would apply. And that's what a migrant is. You see, people change the words in the dictionary people change the definition of the words in the dictionary, but that's what, when I went to school, that's what the definition of a migrant was. Somebody who crosses the border with no documentation, no paperwork, no prospects, and is then just let free in that country. That's not a migrant. I don't know what the word for that is. I'm sure there's probably going to be a new word made for that, or they may just change the definition in the dictionary like they've done with so many other words. But that's not the definition of a migrant. So, like I said, the United States have had a huge problem on their southern border. And when the Texans, decided to close the border and militarize their whole southern border, the way that that Joe Biden dealt with that was just absolutely, if you wanted to disunite, like my friend who lives in California, I was talking to him on the phone the other day. He said, you know what? He said, Sean, we're called the United States of America, but we're not very united. So if you want to look at things in the United States, how to, but in its way that did unite the United States, because when Biden wanted to send federal military down there to, open up that border from the state military, it was guys. And if I'm butchering that to you Americans, please correct me in the comments. But, if I'm getting something slightly wrong here, I'm not meaning to get things wrong. Like I said, I don't like commentating on other countries, internal issues, but I think it's important, because for me, that's one of Biden's main, his main gaffes. He should not have done that. He should have let the state of Texas deal with Texas issues themselves, because when the federal, I think you call it federal overreach in the United States, when that happens, normally that is a sign of an unstable government. So then so let's go back to the article, what we talked about. Is Netanyahu trying to shift? Is he trying to get involved with US domestic politics? Well, the other article, another headline that could be exactly the same would be, mate wants other mate to get his job, to get a job. You could argue that that's just what's happening here. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu wants Donald Trump to be the next president. Look at their interpersonal relationships. Does he have that relationship with Kamala Harris? Absolutely not. And I was trying to figure out why the Democrats chose Kamala Harris. And again, if the people from the United States watching and I'm wrong, please correct me. But as I understand it, the legal system in the United States would only allow Kamala Harris to use the money that the Democrats have got for their campaigning if it was her campaigning for the next election. So if they'd have got someone new in her place, like what's his name, Gavin Newsom. I think Gavin Newsom is going to be the next leader of he's going to be the next leader of the Democrats, I guess. So if he'd have come in, then the money, I think it was almost $1 billion, that money wouldn't have been able to be used by Gavin Newsom. I think a lot of that money would have gone back to the donors, because that's just the way the system works. So that's why, as I understand it, Kamala Harris was chose for that role. But anyway, guys, is Benjamin Netanyahu trying to, manipulate US elections? Well, I think that's already been done. I think you need to look at interpersonal relationships. I don't think there's anything, particularly sinister about this relationship, other than those two are friends. And of course, you're going to want your mate to be the president. Other than, what's he going to do? Is he going to want his mate to be the president, or his mate not to be the president? It's a no-brainer. Anyway, guys, I am going to mag to grid, and I'll get you guys another video later.